So we're testing out the EF 50mm Canon 1.8 lens, and we are comparing that with the RF mount one. So you won't see much of a difference between these two other than maybe this side here. And this side will tell you that, hey, there's a focus and there's a control. So what you can do with this is you can essentially change this over to control, and then you can change anything that you set the camera up to do, like ISO, aperture, or shutter speed. So yeah, if you have it on focus, then this will allow you to focus it, but you have to change the camera into manual focus mode, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, I want to compare this this RF right here versus the EF that's currently on with an adapter to the RF mount on my EOS R6. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's see if the EF is just as good as the RF. I think noise-wise, they're relatively similar. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. We can switch back and forth to see. And I want to see if the autofocus engine on this newer lens is any better, because I've already had the EF lens in that I had it from a previous camera that I had, and buying the adapter was $99. So if you think about the cost versus this, which I got for, so with tax and everything, this lens cost $169. So with that said, comparing that to the mount that I had to purchase for the lens that I already had, thinking about how much I can sell this, it would be relatively similar cost. Now, do you want to add in an adapter, or do you want to just hook up to the lens natively? And let's find out if there's any difference. So you can see the camera right now, and then we'll switch over to the RF mount and see if there's any particular difference. We'll keep with the same settings. We're currently at 1/30th of a second shutter speed, f1.8, and ISO 800. Okay, we are now on the RF lens. Same thing, 50mm 1.8. And yeah, let's just start off with the autofocus test. Maybe a tad bit quicker. The sound is relatively the same, so if I were thinking about a quieter lens or a quieter autofocus lens, there's probably no reason to switch from one to another. Let's see. We'll take some stills with this as well to see if one is particularly sharper. We'll take them from the same distance. Now, with the mount, you'll see that this is roughly maybe 2 inches longer than the RF mount, because there's an adapter on it, and then it's just going to be a little bit taller, but adds roughly, let's see, looking at the weight here, we got the EF 50mm with the adapter is 303 grams, and the RF mount just by itself is 191 grams. So roughly 100 grams, give or take. And if you're just talking about the lens here, the lens is just a smidge less weight. So we're talking about 179 grams versus 191 grams. So, and for pounds, it's 0.395 pounds for the EF and 0.421 pounds for the RF mount, or sorry, RF lens. So yeah, if you're looking for weight savings, sure. If you're carrying this around and worrying about weight with this small lens on it, I'm not sure, like, you probably have another issue on your hands. This isn't really a vlog camera, or this isn't really a vlog lens, so I would imagine that's not one of your particular issues. So yeah, let's take some stills, see if this is any better, and honestly, if you can tell the difference here, between the autofocuses. So yeah, let's put this up again. And I have this on the quickest settings for the EOS R6 in that it's not sticky and it'll switch. We're also in zone autofocus, so anything I put in front of my face here in this box, it'll focus on as quickly as possible. So just looking back and forth between these two, they're relatively similar in speed. And then we'll put up the 16mm too. So yeah, if we put these next to each other, this is relatively the difference that you're looking at here, because this is your 16mm and this is your 50mm with the adapter. Now, I would say, because if you're buying an adapter and you already have the EF lens, then you're buying essentially you're buying the mount for this, or the adapter, so that also gives you the opportunity to adapt it to older EF mount lenses. So if you're looking for some cheaper F1 or F1.8 or some cheaper 2.0 or 2.8 zoom lenses, then maybe that's the ticket. Maybe that's something that will be of your interest. So I would say that's probably, if you already have the EF lens, or if you already have an EF lens and you have to buy an RF adapter, then I would say that's worth it, and there's no real need to switch over to the RF 50mm native lens. The only reason why I would say you would want to do that for a particular lens is if the lens had image stabilization, in which case you might be able to get one extra stop of stabilization, in that if you have a RF mount, or if you have an RF lens and you have a RF, like an EOS R6, R3, or R5, then what you can do is get an extra stop of stabilization, versus if you get something that's an EF mount, you may only get 7 steps. So it specifies on Canon's website that you can get up to 8 stops with compatible lenses, and you can get up to 7 stops of image stabilization with most lenses. So that's adding the additional image stabilization in the actual lens. So for example, if I have this 70 to 200 RF mount, or sorry, 70 to 200 RF lens with image stabilization built in, then I will get that additional stop of image stabilization with this particular lens. So that's something to take note of, and something that's just to be aware of. If you're buying like the 35mm or the 85mm prime lens from Canon with the RF mounts, that does have image stabilization in it, and that may be something that you want, especially if you're in low light and your shutter speed is lower, or if you are shooting sports and you're trying to, like, you're shooting pretty close in. It's honestly, I think it's more important for these zoom lenses, like for this 200, for example. If I have to zoom in and I'm trying to keep it still, that's where it becomes an issue. And also, if you're taking longer exposure videos, or sorry, longer exposure images, and you're not on a tripod, that would be something that you have to look at as well. So like if you're doing long exposure images and you have it on a tripod, then you have really nothing to worry about. But yeah, with that said, let's go over to some of the stills and take a look at the quality of the stills. Tested out a few stills. Let me know in the comments what you think. But I think if you have an EF 50mm, the second generation with the STM autofocus motor, you don't really need to upgrade to the RF 50mm. I would say the only reason I would is if you are just buying a new Canon mirrorless camera and you have no particular reason, like you don't already have an EF 50mm. And yeah, maybe if you have the first generation, you might want to upgrade. But honestly, because this thing has this focus control thing here, let's see if we can get it in the light here. And this EF mount, or if this EF 50mm has an autofocus on and off, I'd almost prefer to get that one because as far as I can see, the quality is the same. Spinning the focus ring, like this one has a little bit more tension, so if that's something that you particularly like, if that's something that you associate with quality, I mean, I think it's pretty linear, but I like it to be a little bit looser so that it's easier for me to spin. When I'm spinning this one, there's really like no tension at all. And I think these new RF lenses do have quite a bit of tension on them. In fact, I think the easiest focus motor, at least in the one that I have, or the lenses that I have here, is the 70 to 200. One thing to note is that if you are looking at ND filters or anything to put in front of the lens to screw it on top, you should note that the new RF lens has a 43mm thread, and that is the same as the Canon RF 16mm lens. And I'm assuming that this would be the same with the 35mm lens as well. So if you're looking to buy, for example, one ND filter that fits all three of those, then I would say that would be another reason why you would want to purchase the same RF lenses, because they would have the same thread and you wouldn't have to buy an additional one. The 50mm EF lens has a 49mm thread on it, so yeah, those will not fit on the same RF lenses here. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.